By my reckoning, English Puritanism lasted for around 130 years and transitioned into other historical expressions of Christianity about 330 years ago. So why should anyone bother with them today? Well, many believers who've lived in the 3 centuries since the last of the Puritans died out have found them to be a valuable resource of theological clarity, fervent spirituality, and faithfulness in the face of intense opposition. From a historical point of view, I think they're interesting because they all lived and served God in crazy times of religious and political upheaval. It's also the Puritans who become associated under specific labels and banners that gave birth to several of the major denominations in the English-speaking church. So they're all really important if we want to understand why we have the religious landscape that we do in Christianity today. It's always worth acknowledging that Puritan is a dirty word for many, and the popular stereotype of the overzealous, narrow-minded, fun-hating, witch-burning religious bigot has persisted for centuries. But in many Christian circles, the Puritan is a special kind of saint, an exemplar from earlier times of what faithful Christianity should look like. Those who have looked past the stereotype for long enough to come to love the Puritans love them for particular reasons. They appreciate their commitment to theological depth, in contrast to much of the shallow belief that characterises the approach of many churches to doctrine in recent times. They appreciate the way that Puritan authors seek to exalt God through meditating on His glorious attributes. They appreciate the way that such meditation on divine characteristics is intended by the Puritans to produce serious and lasting affections in the heart towards God. And they appreciate the practical wisdom these pastors and teachers provide for living out the Christian life. One of the reasons that I'd love more Christians to learn from Thomas Watson and other Puritans is because I see them as examples of steadfastness in the face of persecution and personal affliction. The 17th century wasn't an easy time to be alive, and the religious turmoil in Britain during this period made things even harder if you were trying to stay true to biblical convictions, things that many evangelicals today would take for granted. Job loss, social marginalisation, slander, arrest and imprisonment, loss of property, loss of family, disease and disaster, in some cases the threat of execution. All of these things were familiar experiences to Watson and many of his contemporaries. Christians in Western nations like America, the UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand have often looked to places like Asia and the Middle East for examples of what it looks like to be faithful in the face of terrible persecution. But as many of us have the growing sense that biblical fidelity is becoming more costly in our societies, we have valuable examples in the history of our own nations, which all have roots in the 17th century Britain. Examples of what it means to persevere in godliness when the culture and even the state is set against you. And so if you want to immerse yourself in deep Reformed theology, grow in biblically grounded spirituality, or prepare yourself, your family and your church for suffering on account of Christ's name, get to know the Puritans. They have a lot to offer the church today.